Shana Tova. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. When we think of Dorothy and Oz, we hear this song. But the song's lyricist, Yip Harburg, had a different place in mind when he would say, "There is no place like home." Harburg was the youngest of 4 children born to Russian Jewish immigrants. His real name was Isidor Hochberg, and he grew up in a Yiddish-speaking Orthodox home here in New York. The music was written by Harold Arlen, a cantor's son. His real name was Hyman Arluk, and his parents were from Lithuania. When the two of them were composing this song, the men reached deep into their Jewish consciousness, framed by the pogroms of the past and the rising anti-Semitism, and they began to compose a song about dreams, about a land that all of us have heard of. Read the lyrics in their Jewish context, and suddenly the words are no longer about wizards and Oz, but about Jewish survival. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. This song that we have all heard over and over is actually a tribute to our Jewish home and the promise that it holds for safety and survival. Dreaming about a land over the rainbow didn't start in 1939 when this song was written. In many ways, it goes back to Parshat Lech Lecha, where God promised Abraham, our ancestor, a land that God will show us, a land for our people from time immemorial, a land that we were promised would flow with milk and honey. This is a significant year, 2017. It is in this year that we can think about numerous anniversaries that relate to the state of Israel. 120 years ago, in 1897, it was Herzl who said, "If you will it, it is no dream," as he held the first Zionist Congress, ushering in a political campaign for the modern state of Israel, a sovereign home for the Jews after nearly 2,000 years of wandering. Following the first Zionist Congress in 1897, Herzl wrote in his diary the following: "At Basel, I founded the Jewish state. If I say this out loud today, I will be answered by universal laughter. Perhaps in 5 years, certainly in 50, everyone will admit it." He was correct, down to the year. More on that in a moment. 100 years ago, this November 1917, we recall the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration was a British government public statement made during World War I. It announced the support of the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, then part of the Ottoman Empire. It was contained in a letter dated November 2nd, 1917, from the United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary to the Lord Walter Rothschild, a leader of the British Jewish community. Moving forward 70 years, after going through the depths of despair of the horrors in Europe, we find the dream realized. It was 1947, 50 years after Herzl wrote in his diary, where the UN approved the partition plan, setting up Israel as an independent state. Amos Oz, one of Israel's greatest living novelists, wrote in his autobiography, about how his painfully distant father danced with him in the streets of Jerusalem that night, November 29th, 1947, the day of the partition plan. Later that night, still drenched with sweat and with his clothes still on, the young Amos Oz laid in bed. To his shock, his father laid beside him. The father told the young boy that night how Polish children had bullied him in the streets, stealing his pants, ridiculing him for being a Jew. But from now on, from that moment, we have our own state. You will never be bullied just because you are a Jew. Not then, never again. From tonight, that's finished here forever. The partition plan resulted in the extraordinary Declaration of Independence in May of 1948. But sadly, it was not without tremendous struggle, and there was and is still a need to continue dreaming. As the poet Natan Alterman wrote in December of 47, nothing would come easy. Saving the Jews would require getting dirty. No longer would purity and ritual holiness guarantee a Jew's survival. Staying alive would require young men and young women to die. And so he penned the silver platter. As the nation arises, torn at heart but breathing to receive its miracle, the only miracle, as the ceremony draws near, it will rise, standing erect in the moonlight and terror and joy, when across from it will step out a youth and alas, and slowly march toward the nation, dressed in battle gear, dirty, shoes heavy with grime. They ascend the path quietly, to change garb, to wipe their brow. They have not yet found time. Still bone weary from days and from nights in the field, full of endless fatigue and unrest, yet the dew of their youth is still seen on their head. Thus they stand at attention, giving no sign of life or death. Then a nation in tears and amazement will ask, "Who are you?" And they will answer quietly, "We are the silver platter on which the Jewish state was given." Thus they will say and fall back in the shadows, and the rest will be told in the Chronicles of Israel. As Rabbi Daniel Gordis wrote in his new book on the history of Zionism, and those chronicles continued 50 years ago with the joyous reunification of Jerusalem in the victory of the Six-Day War in June of 1967. This victory was a big celebration. Just a month earlier, Israel was on the verge of destruction. Arab countries had its weapons pointed at it, ready to shoot, and Israel felt alone and isolated. In defending itself, it not only survived, but thrived. It increased its spiritual center, the Kotel. But we know this did not come without its complications. As Gordis continued, during the War of Independence, some 700,000 Arabs had left Israel and made their ways to neighboring countries, which would, in the most part, turn them into permanent refugees by not making them citizens. And then the Six-Day War radically altered their lives again. They now found themselves living not under Jordanians' rule, but under Israel's control. In 1967, there were 1.25 Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. Today, there are 4 million. The Six-Day War also had an impact on U.S. Jewry. American Jews were jubilant. In the year after the war, 16,000 American Jews moved to Israel. This was more than the entire number of American Jews that had made Aliyah from 1948 to 1967. As Rabbi Gordis writes, A long cultivated Zionist dream had come true. It was a dream of safety, of confidence, of pride, of international admiration. It would not last long. The calm history that Amos Oz had been promised by his father that night long ago shifted again. Amos Oz said, "Jerusalem is mine, yet a stranger to me. The city is inhabited, people live there, but I don't understand their language. They are living where they have always lived, and I am the stranger. Their eyes hate me." Over the past 50 years, we have continued to dream. We dreamt of peace in 1993 when Rabin and Arafat shook hands on the White House lawn. We dreamt of security when Sharon ordered the withdrawal from Gaza. We dreamt of calm when Netanyahu's government approved a negotiated deal with members of the Reform and Conservative and Haredi coalitions regarding the Kotel, and yet we are still stuck. And yet we still look towards Israel as the Jewish home. On the second day of Rosh Hashanah, I spoke here about our spiritual residence. So what does it mean to come home to Israel? What are the foundations? What are we building? What is this incredible experiment? As Robert Frost said, home is the place where, when you go there, they take you in. Reflecting on this, Rabbi David Wolpe writes, Israel is a national home in just that sense. For centuries, no place felt compelled to take Jews in. We were at the whim of others. Now we have a home. The customary conclusion of the Passover Seder is, what do we say? Next year in Jerusalem. It's a way of insisting that our home is still elusive, but we are always trying to get there. Even those who live there say next year in a rebuilt Jerusalem. Rebuilt doesn't only mean physically, it means spiritually as well. It means peacefully. Yair Lapid, head of the Yesh Atid party in Knesset, greeted a group of new Israelis this summer, right after they made Aliyah. He said, a person who makes Aliyah is a person who makes a decision, that their life isn't random, that they are the architect of their fate. In that sense, all of you, in your first hours as Israeli citizens, constitute a deep expression for the soul of our nation, because your decision to come to Israel means that Israel isn't just a place, it's an idea. It's a choice. Lapid continues, the Zionist idea of a free people in a free country was built from its first day on people like you. People who woke up one day in a faraway country and said, I'm part of something. I belong. I belong to something and I want to live it every moment, every day. Lapid said, Israel needs you. In most other countries, immigrants are met by stern-faced immigrant officers looking for a reason to reject them. Israel welcomes you happily. We look at you and we say, we need you. We need your love, and we need your brains and your energy. And we need you because without you, our family isn't complete. Only in Israel can people land at the airport and the first thing they hear is welcome home. So what are our dreams for Israel in 5778? Our biggest milestone, 70 years of the state of Israel. A home is the home we hope for is a place without constant strife, without the pain and uncertainty that the real world brings. A real home is safe, and so far there is no perfect safety in the world. Perhaps that's why home is so powerful in memory and in our dreams. That home will always beckon to us. Remarkably, we have created a messy, fraught place that Jews can still call home. Yossi Klein Halevi recently said, Israel celebrated its existence, life itself. We had done it, survived the 20th century, but not merely survived by reverse annihilation into a kind of redemption, but we had awakened from our worst nightmare, into our most extravagant dream. Today we begin the 70th year of that celebration, and as we begin, let us look to our tradition, to the Psalms for our home and our dreams of Israel. I hope that Israel will be blessed like in the book of Psalms. Adonai oz la'amo yiten. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. God will give to God's people both a blessing of strength and a blessing of peace. This prophetic psalm is so important to us this year. Blessings of strength and peace. Seemingly contradictory, these are two sides of the same coin. A sovereign state can't live without strength, but it must live in peace with its neighbors. Peace between its peoples, peace between it and other peoples, and strength and survival and fortitude for now and the future. Are there concerns about Israel? Sure. Does it break my heart that Jews like us, you and me, can't necessarily pray as we desire at the Kotel? Am I insulted that my conversions count in every country except Israel? Is it crazy that I can officiate at a wedding in a beach in Mexico or in a backyard in Vermont or on this bima, but not in Jerusalem? There are major issues of religious pluralism. But we don't disengage from Israel when there's a problem. That's when we engage even more. We support efforts for religious pluralism, whether in the construction of mikvaot for all streams, or for the ability of rabbis to be counted, or for funding to go to all of the different denominations in Israel. It is why on December 3rd, I will be one of 6 rabbis here in New York City performing a wedding for 3 couples from Israel who can't get married in Israel the way they want. 6 of us, 6 rabbis, will stand in front of thousands at Temple Emmanuel to marry these couples. All of you are invited. I'm serious. They're hoping to have at least 2,000 people in attendance. There are tremendous concerns for what I call the soul of Israel. The level of corruption is clearly at the highest of levels. It isn't inspiring when the prime minister is under investigation or when past leaders are in jail for rape. It is painful to know that the rights of Arab citizens who were guaranteed rights under the Israeli Declaration of Independence don't have the same access to education. There is still so much to dream about. There is still lots to do, and we should have those debates and those arguments. And I hope over the coming year, as we have our SPS talks once every few months, that you will come and be a part of a smart, thoughtful dialogue where we don't need to agree, but we need to converse. As Danny Gordis wrote, in the movement's early years, Herzl sought a state, while Achad Ha'am thought statehood wasn't the issue, that it would be a mistake. Years later, there was a debate between Ben-Gurion and Begin with regard to German reparations. Should we take the money and the Mercedes or not? As with prior ideological debates, this was not pro-Zionist versus anti-Zionist. This was a deep divide between 2 camps who loved the Jewish state and who were committed to the Jewish state, to its flourishing, but who disagreed about what course of action would be best to protect its soul. Let us look at those Jews with whom we disagree, not as those who are fighting against Israel, but fighting for Israel. This is what it means to be a family. We see the world differently. We disagree with each other. Just as we remember that during the time in the desert, the Israelites carried 2 sets of tablets, both the broken ones and the whole ones, we carry our brokenness with our dreams. Just as our Liberty Bell here in Philadelphia, or there in Philadelphia, is cracked, we know there's still repair to do in all of our homes. Just as we break a glass at a wedding, the happiest moment of a life cycle for a couple, we know that there's still fixing to do. 3 weeks ago, I was invited to a meeting with a number of New York rabbis and members of Knesset who were coming to the United States to encounter Jewish Americans. A number of these members of Knesset had never been to the US, and yet were engaging in dialogue about issues of religious pluralism. We had an open, honest, and at times very heated, though respectful, debate. Here was the thing, though. Despite our disagreements, at the end of the meeting, we all got up, we walked over to one another, hugged, we had never met, hugged, and wished each other a Shana Tova. That's what it means to dream of a Jewish state. I just received my copy of Shimon Peres's memoir, No Room for Small Dreams. It was published posthumously. You might think that this was his final gift to the world, but actually he performed one final act of kindness on his deathbed. He donated his corneas to someone who could not see. He literally opened the eyes of someone who was blind. After his death, a poet named Sharon Shinar penned the following poem titled, Someone Will Get Your Eyes. Someone will get your eyes. The eyes that saw a nation before the nation succeeded in seeing itself. The eyes that saw Ben-Gurion stand on his head and Golda in the seat of prime minister. Someone will get your eyes. The eyes that saw wars and terror and bereavement and saw independence and a flag and a Star of David, eyes that saw a prime minister assassinated, but also saw peace treaties, eyes that under no circumstances ever agreed to see the end. Someone will get your eyes. Eyes that saw innovation even before the world had an entry in the dictionary. Eyes that saw losses but refused to see defeat. Eyes that saw worlds and saw leaders. Eyes that taught each day anew to have faith. Someone will get your eyes. And how symbolic it is that you have chosen to leave them behind. Eyes that saw so much of everything and insisted that no matter how dark things look in a tunnel at any given moment, there was always a light at the end. Someone will get your eyes. And that is so much more than everything else. For history always remains behind. But if we succeed in looking forward, like your eyes, then perhaps, even for just a moment, we will succeed in believing all of this for ourselves, for you. Peres could see things that others could not. He never stopped looking to the future. He was often asked, what is the greatest achievement you have reached in your lifetime or that you will reach in the future? His reply, there was a great painter named Mordechai Ardon who was asked, what was the most beautiful picture you have ever painted? The picture I will paint tomorrow. That was Peres's answer. And that should be our dream for the future, our vow tonight on Kol Nidre, that we will dream dreams, we will work to make them come true, that we will vow vows and do our best to accomplish them. We must know from where we came. We must learn and understand our history, our story. We must connect to Israel face to face. Come to Israel next December with Sutton Place Synagogue on a family trip. Registration is already open. Come to SPS for a class that I'm teaching on Monday afternoons about the milestones, 1917, 47, 67, that I spoke about tonight. Join us on October 24th when we listen to two journalists from very different vantage points debate Israel's soul and its relationship to Israel, a relationship to America today. And then we must celebrate our dreams. And we must vow to not rest until our dreams are realized. And we must strengthen our core, our center, that which keeps us strong. We must support institutions like the Masorti movement that represent our values. And we need to engage in dialogue with people throughout the political spectrum, since we don't make peace with our friends, but with our enemies. And then we should get some rest, because when we awaken in this new year, it will be time to make our dreams come true. Shana Tova.